G'day guys, today I thought I'd go through each of the players taken during the mid-season draft, really just for a quick and dirty take. And for some quick announcements quickly before I get started. For those that don't follow me on Twitter, make sure you do at AFL Draft Expert. The reason being, of course, that during the mid-season draft, as with previous national drafts, I went through pretty much every time a player was picked, really just, I guess, giving a really quick description of how they go about their play. Even if you're not all that interested in the stuff I produce during the year, if you want to know really sort of that instant sort of information about all the players drafted, it's a good follow. Additionally, I produced a review article on espn.com.au/AFL, and really this is designed as something sort of a little bit complimentary. In that piece, I went through how good is Jai Culley really, some of the biggest hits, best plug and play players, some of the hard luck stories, and otherwise covering sort of clubs drafting more so for potential than, I guess, proven performance. So there's some of the things you can find out about there. But to get started and to go through some of the players. Number one pick, Jai Culley. So obvious pick, and in my opinion at least, it's the correct one. And it seems like mostly the consensus was Culley was the guy. If I was to say where he'd go in the national draft, well, if there was no mid-season draft, then I'd be saying possibly late first round, probably second round somewhere. In terms of where he would fit into my own personal power rankings, if I was to include him in my June power rankings, probably around that 10 mark for, again, a very quick feel. Basically, I'm really optimistic about his scope to develop. And the reason why, of course, well, you're looking at a tall mid of around 193 centimeters. He's got the ball winning capabilities. He has that sort of inside-outside combo. But of course, he can go forward, hit the scoreboard, strong contested mark. And then also beautiful kick as well. So having all that, so he has the penetration, but he really spots up those targets and really hits them, gets the ball out in front of him. So with that sort of whole package, with the performances on the board this year, which have been absolutely sensational, hard worker who's really applied himself and he's shown that rate of improvement, he's incredibly draftable, and that's why I'm really so bullish that I would have included him in my June power rankings that high, and a lot higher than I imagine others would have. Really wanted to make those points. Callan Dawson, look, he was the only key defender in this mid-season draft I really viewed as frankly draftable. The rest I just don't regard as AFL footballers or having the scope to become AFL footballers, to put it plainly. And with a Dawson, so he's athletic, so he's got the leaping, he's got the speed, but reads it well behind the play and good intercept marks. So there's some of the things to look forward to. But look, he's not a huge guy, not super tall, not super strong. So he will still need time developing. But yeah, look, the signs have been there at least in the VFL that, look, he's pretty reasonable at that level. So hopefully with a bit of time and development, he can take that next step and become an AFL footballer. Massimo D'Ambrosio, really good rebounding defender. So a bit of a joke that Essendon are taking more rebounding defenders, of course, but maybe it flags the possibility that maybe a Dyson Heppel will be available at the end of the year. So perhaps for a club looking for some additional veteran leadership and stability, maybe that means a potential opportunity there with a Heppel. But with a D'Ambrosio, the key is really just absolutely brilliant user of the footy. Racks it up in defence, and look, he is that small defender, he's a sub 180, but look, he does play above his height, has the one-on-one capabilities, good aerially, so you've got that, generates some drive through his run and carry as well from defence, so it's a bit of a combination there, but well performed, and look, he is worthy of a pick in the mid-season draft, I think it's reasonable to say. For Adelaide, so Brett Turner. So this was the first real, I guess you could say, surprise in the mid-season draft. My thinking was that it would actually be Josh Carmichael, who ended up at 9 to Collingwood. I really thought he was probably more likely than not going to be the pick, but there were the rumours, of course, in the lead-up that Turner was heavily linked to Adelaide and would be a chance. But just with Carmichael available, I thought, well, he'd be the obvious pick and Turner was more the backup plan, but not so. So with a Turner, so he was draft eligible initially in 2014, and look, I hadn't actually really seen much of him that year until I'd really seen footage and seen his stats, and that was sort of when I really got sort of on board for the first time, and I actually included him in my power rankings that year, or at least my extended power rankings. He wasn't a top 20 pick by any means. But yeah, just he's always had that ball winning capability, strong mark, hits the scoreboard. So when you've got sort of that combination of components, there's something there. And yeah, look, with a Turner, he's been really good for a number of years in the Sandful. And I think it was really, I guess, that dominant performance against Adelaide that ultimately got him recruited. So, and really convinced the scouts. So didn't sort of take too much sort of effort or advanced scouting there to sort of notice that big game from him. But yeah, look, can he play this year? I think he's got the capability to. So he's returning from an ankle. Expect him to be back in sort of the next week or two. Might sort of get a few games maybe in the Sandful to guess as to what Adelaide might have planned. And then from there, look, I think there's a chance later on in the year to be introduced into Adelaide's best 22 potentially. So, and look, is the problems with Adelaide's midfield are really that they're too short. They don't have those big-bodied ball winners, but at the same time, they don't have that spark or acceleration out of there. So, look, at least Turner isn't sort of too small. So he's that 185. He's reasonably strong at that sort of 88 kilos. And look, he moves pretty well. He's not slow. He's not without skills. So, yeah, look, he's a pretty good piece who I think has the scope, honestly, to push or at least contend for a best 22 spot. So, yeah, certainly one to watch out for in terms of someone who could immediately have an impact. He's one of the few that really has that scope out of these, it's fair to say, with really a lot of these guys more, I guess, potential over performance as I go through in my piece on ESPN. And next up, I've got Wade Dirksen. So, yeah, look, he's been an incredible improver this year in the Waffle, and coming last year from the VFL where he wasn't getting games. Look, they're the sort of things that you want. You really want that improvement, and he's someone where he's grown late as well. So 12 centimeters over the last 2 years. So, yeah, look, there's scope to develop, and if he continues with that sort of rapid rate of improvement, that's sort of the way where maybe he has a pathway in the future to be that sort of best 22 key forward. But this year, look, don't have any expectations. But in terms of a long-term piece that, based on the rate of improvement, could be something in the future, Dirksen is certainly one to keep a close eye out for down the track. But yeah, look, still a 20-year-old. He's a 197, but yeah, strong mark, quite athletic, gets around the ground quite well. So there's some of the things to look forward to there. Max Ramsden, so you're looking at a project ruck here. So give him time, but gets around the ground, very mobile. Not a dominant sort of tap ruckman, but yeah, it's really a bit like a Tim English where it's really what he does around the ground and that sort of capability to find the footy that'll really impress. But yeah, very mobile, watch out for that. Potentially a player for the future if he really sort of shows that rate of improvement year on year, which of course with those sort of rucks is the thing, because you're looking for what they'll be at age 25. And with a Ramsden, look, he's just played NAB League this year for the first year after just really playing school footy previously. So that's the story there. Oscar Forkhead, look, he's been quite good in the NAB League as a midfielder, but yeah, look, with Gold Coast midfield looking really quite good this year, actually. Yeah, look, we won't be seeing him this year, I can't imagine, but maybe if he has a big preseason, maybe he starts pushing for games possibly next year, but we'll have to wait and see. But again, out of the NAB League, don't expect too much from those guys out of the under-18 ranks, and certainly not early on. It's just not really that realistic with a lot of these. Bryn Teakle, yeah, probably the better of those, I guess, more mature age rucks. So the right two ruckmen I feel have been taken in. Ramsden as more that project. Teakle, who's probably a little bit further progressed, but yeah, look, he's pretty capable. So good ruckman, but can also sort of, I guess, be forward as well, take some grabs, kick some goals. And another as well where he's shown that sort of rate of improvement. So again, they're the things you're really looking for in your rucks, where you want, again, that year-on-year improvement. It's not who they are today, but who they'll be in their mid-20s. So with a Teakle, he'd be around probably a 22-year-old top of mind, could be 23. So he's still got a couple of years until he really reaches that stage where you'd really want him to be hitting that peak performance point. Josh Carmichael, really surprising slider as I've gone through, but yeah, just a really sort of strong ball winning midfielder, but he's got those contested marking capabilities forward of centre. He's hitting the scoreboard at a great rate. Really long kick, but uses it really nicely. So, yeah, there's certainly potential here for Collingwood to have found a piece. So, and look, in Collingwood's situation, of course, they need key position players, but yeah, look, when you've got the likes of Dirksen, who was the best key forward and the only one, frankly, that I would have been willing to pick, and then of the key defenders, Dawson, who was really the only good key defender there and the only one I would have been willing to pick, the likes of a Carmichael is a pretty obvious pick. So, Collingwood fans, don't hate on the recruiters on this one. I think they've actually made the right call. So, yeah, and again, really good value, and that's what you want. You really want to be looking for these potential best 22 players, and a Carmichael is really at this point the highest probability of potentially being that, both short and long term, I would be saying. Unless, of course, you're going for someone more in their mid to late 20s, then you might get that more immediacy without that longer term future. And with a Carmichael, I should also go through. So this year was his first year in the Sandful and his first pre-season. And yet he's hitting the scoreboard at above a goal a game as a sort of ball-winning midfielder. So really exciting player, and one I wouldn't be sleeping on. If Collingwood's player development is going well, Carmichael is one of those guys who could really push through. Potentially for games this year, but probably more likely he could be pushing for a regular spot next year, would be more my thinking. Jacob Bauer, so he was a Sydney Academy prospect, overlooked, but a really sort of high-leaping, strong-marking type. He's one where he hasn't found a lot of the ball as a forward in the Sandful, but he hasn't needed a lot of it either to hit the scoreboard quite heavily. So my personal opinion with a Bauer is that yeah, look, he probably won't make it as a forward, to be realistic, but because he's got those aerial and strong marking capabilities, I like his chances as that sort of medium to tall interceptor. So could be something like a Mitch McGovern behind the ball. So that would be the sort of development vision I would be having with someone like a Bauer. So, but look, for sure, Richmond can feel free to start him as a forward, but I would like to see him sort of switch back. I think that's where he's got the better chance of making the grade. And of course, with the mid-season draft prospects, I should add as well, the vast majority of these guys won't make the grade, but as we saw with last year's draft, there will be a few that do make it, and some that'll be slower burns that eventually develop and become good pieces. So there's some of the things to be aware of, but we're not expecting everyone to be an absolute hit by any means. That would be completely unrealistic and not really understanding the sort of realities of the mid-season draft. And those prospects that are being taken as those more project players for the most part, who really, again, clubs are more so picking on potential. And another of those potential guys is Hugo Hall-Kahan. So I've really liked his impact in each of the NAB League games that I've seen of him. Where he's that sort of high leaper, strong mark, quite a good ball user, and he's hitting the scoreboard as well. So they're all good signs. But yeah, look, he's been playing forward, but it's more actually a bit like I'd say of a Bauer. I actually think his best chance to make it is if he was to make a move to defence. What I've seen from Hall-Kahan that makes me feel personally that he was really draftable for this mid-season draft was actually the way he takes on the game with his run and carry, has the speed, has the agility, but just that pure run and dare where he's just got that willingness to go. Anytime he's got it and he's got that space in front of him, this guy's just going to absolutely go. So that's what makes me really excited about his chances in defence. And look, he's about a 188 top of mind, so it's not like he's short, so he's tall enough. And look, if he's got those marking capabilities and is strong aerially, so if he's got all that good ball use, he's pretty good one-on-one as well. So having those attributes with that run being that big-time weapon for him, I think that's really the development vision that I would be having with him. And he's had his injuries, so look, that's probably what held him back, certainly last year, but yeah, more so I guess why he hasn't been recognised until this mid-season draft. So with Zane Williams, another Sandful player who's really been hitting the scoreboard quite well. So Geelong have got another sort of, I guess, potential goal-kicking option of a forward. So is that sort of more small-medium type. So yeah, look, we'll have to see how he goes. But yeah, with a Stengel, whether he's needed, not sure. I probably would have thought there would have been a few other needs that may have been more, I guess, pressing to address. But yeah, look, Geelong might sort of see Williams' path to being that sort of more longer term best 22 player is higher than some of the others. But for me, looking at Geelong's defence, I would have thought Casey Voss would have been a pretty obvious choice. Just to really give, I guess, Tom Stewart another really good sort of piece back there and take some of the pressure, both intercepting and rebounding off him, and even defending for that matter. Sam Durden, look, I think he'll probably play for Carlton just because they're absolutely decimated in defence. But yeah, look, as I mentioned before, the key defenders outside of Dawson are really not good. So with a Durden, look, former first round pick, so that sounds nice on paper. And look, at the time, he sort of presented quite well, where he's that taller, almost 2 meters type who intercepted quite well. So at the time, it would have been pretty easy to think, oh yeah, this guy's probably going to develop, but he just hasn't. That's been the problem. So he's not strong enough one-on-one, hasn't become that elite interceptor like he threatened to be. It's not like he's an incredible rebounder from defense. So yeah, look, it's just one of those, I guess, depth plays just to, I guess, fill a need. So, like, it's understandable in Carlton's position. They're going for a top 8 finish. They want to be competitive come finals time, assuming they make it, which I think they probably will. But yeah, look, that's basically the case with Durden, where I just don't. He hasn't developed over time. He's a 25-year-old. He's not AFL quality, so they're just sort of, I guess, the things you have to be aware of. But look, I think he'll be playing, and we'll just have to see how he goes. But I'm not that optimistic that he's going to hold his spot beyond this year, it's fair to say. In terms of a best 22 context, I don't think he's that caliber of player. One interesting pick here for Fremantle was QX. So obviously Fremantle really desperately wanted a key forward here. So that was the rationale behind it. And look, he has shown glimpses in the waffle, and he's been importantly as well hitting the scoreboard. So very raw, very much a project player. But yeah, we'll have to see how he goes. But yeah, look, he's an athletic key forward. So yeah, Fremantle fans get excited by some of the things you see from him. But yeah, look, there will be quite a lot of improvement required for him to become that best 22 piece. So bit of a wait and see anyway. But it's a bit of a sort of flying attempt. But yeah, look, if I had to pick probably another key forward here, I actually think it's probably the better of the options they could have gone with. So I'm not going to hate on the pick from that perspective. It's just I thought in other positions there were better players available. So, but Fremantle, of course, went the needs route there, which I guess as a team that's trying to contend this year, look, it's sort of understandable. But yeah, next year I'd be probably saying, or over the off-season, I'd say, look, go for a Taylor Walker, who Adelaide don't seem all that fond of necessarily. And yeah, look, if you're a contending team and you can get that caliber of key forward, and it's not like he's going to be on huge money given his age, that would be the way that I would be more so approaching the problem, as opposed to going for a project player who really needs quite a bit of development, it's fair to say. Jai Menzie, so following the pathway of Jackson Callow from Tasmania all the way to the Sandful, and also copying him in being that mid-season draft pick. So, and going in the second round of the mid-season draft as it happens. So, yeah, with Menzie, I actually thought last year he was Tasmania's most talented. I thought he was a better footballer than Banks, who went in the 20s. So, and I covered him briefly on espn.com.au/AFL last year. So, for some of his efforts in the NAB League. But yeah, look, in his first 2 games, really exploded out of the box in the Sandful. And in those rounds before the mid-season draft as well, he went really well in the Sandful. So big-time scoreboard impact threat, hits his targets inside 50, provides the pressure as well. So he's got those sort of components where, look, maybe as that sort of medium to small sort of forward, maybe he could develop. And Essendon need that, so understandable pick there. James Blank, yeah, look, I'm not a huge rap necessarily, but look, Hawthorn have had success from within their system, and of course, being a Box Hill piece, look, there's going to be that sort of continuity. He knows what to expect. He knows the club, so it makes that transition and chemistry components that little bit easier. But yeah, look, with a Blank, it's pretty much, he's a blanket in that he'll negate opposition forwards, but basically there's no intercepting component, no rebounding component. So given that, I'm not necessarily a fan of his play, but yeah, good luck to Hawthorn with, I guess, developing him, because he needs quite substantial development to, I guess, become that AFL quality piece. And then you've got a Will Hayes, who Carlton picked out of their VFL team. So again, going to that chemistry card, well, if you've got someone within your program who you can just really bring up to AFL grade to play games, well, that makes it that little bit easier, because he's got that familiarity with those structures. And yeah, look, with a Will Hayes, he's been one of the standouts in the VFL this year. So one of the few instances where an immediate player is actually being picked. So I would not be at all surprised to see a Hayes line up, whether it's on a wing, pushing through the midfield as well. He can obviously do a bit of both. I think we're probably going to see him. He's that immediate piece, and he's stepped up even another gear from where he was at previously with the Dogs. So, yeah, I think it's a fairly reasonable pick without sort of thinking he's necessarily going to be a super long-term piece, but he can provide a few years of pretty reasonable service and maybe even push for a best 22 spot. So, yeah, don't mind this pick from Carlton, actually. So, one of their more reasonable ones. And for those of you who have made it to the end, I've got a little bit of a spoiler to provide. So for my upcoming June AFL Draft Power Rankings, which I believe ESPN will be publishing on Wednesday this week, I've got a new number one. So it'll be interesting to hear some of the guesses in the comments section below who that might be. I'm not going to spoil it, of course, until the rankings are out, but it will be someone who probably won't be in everyone's top 5 and will be outside even some top 10s. So that's probably about as much of a hint as I'll give, but it's a player I am very, very optimistic of the future development of. So yeah, certainly keep your eyes peeled for that. Thanks for watching, guys, and if you enjoy this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for future updates. And if you've got any questions around the mid-season draft, or for that matter, the national draft, hit me up in the comments section below, and of course, I'm always happy to ask. Regarding my mid-season draft piece, or that review piece on espn.com.au/AFL, I'll leave a link in the description below. And yeah, make sure you keep an eye out for my June power rankings, because it'll really be something, it's fair to say. And every month I do update my profiles as well. So it's not sort of like you see it 1 month, you've seen all the months. It's really sort of each month I do provide those updates. And in a lot of cases, sort of the updated stats based on, yeah, some of the really key performances from some of the players as well. But yeah, anyway, guys, see you in the next video.